Hi,
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Welcome back to Miss Cleo's Storytelling Corner. My name is Cleo Duke Wright, and I own Cull Books at 677 Blue Hills Avenue in Hartford. The doors are always open and welcoming for you to come in and have a cup of coffee with me, or just sit down and talk books. Always welcome to Cull Books at 677 Blue Hills Avenue. I'm a little kind of nervous today because I have a wonderful guest here. I'm telling you, it's good and impressive. But you know who I am, right? Okay, and our guest is going to be at Cull Books this evening at 6:30. Come by and join us. You're not going to be able to stay away after you hear him on Miss Cleo's Storytelling Corner this morning. His name is Dr. Obari Cartman. He doesn't look old enough to be a doctor, but he really is. He's a doctor of
psychology.
He's a doctor of psychology.
Clinical and community psychology.
Clinical and community psychology.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're going to get right to it and talk to Dr. Cartman. He wrote a book. Let me tell you, the Ladies' Man. Conversations for Young Black Men about manhood and relationships. Woo! Do we need this or what? Mm-hmm. We certainly do need this. And our young men certainly, and young ladies too, certainly do need some help with this. I think as parents and as adults, we have kind of been a little slack on helping our young people in relationships. Maybe we gave them a little bit too much TV and too much other things. But Dr. Cartman's going to tell us what we did wrong and how he's going to fix all of this for us. Okay? So, Dr. Cartman, good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Cleo. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm very happy that you're here. And let's just start off with just telling us how you got to this point, what brought all this on, and what this book is kind of about. So a little bit about yourself and how you got to the book.
Well, I actually am really happy to be back in Hartford. This book was born in Hartford. I was here on an internship working for the Village of Families and Children.
Oh, yes.
And I was there for a year doing therapy. There's not a lot of black men doing therapy. And so anytime I go to a place, I get all the boys. I have a caseload full of black boys. And so that was true here at Hartford. And when I was here, I was doing a program where the kind of therapy I was allowed to do gave me the flexibility to be able to like move around, be in their houses, go play basketball, do that kind of stuff. And so it became more like a big brother type of relationship than like a therapist on the couch with the pad and all that. And so as I was doing that, I just started to realize how many things that they needed to be talking and thinking about that they weren't having access to with other men in their house or in their life or their peers. Like there were just so many things that they seemed to, for the very first time, be thinking about in conversation during our therapy. And so it was that started to get the ball rolling and be saying, I need to put something together so I don't have to be in the room every time. But then it really happened when one of those young men got locked up and wanted to read. Like he was asking me to send him some books. And I scoured the bookstores and the internet for books that were written with young black men as the audience in mind. And I couldn't find nothing. I found one book, a Hill Harper book, Letters to a Young Brother.
Yeah,
right?
Yes, I had that one. There's another one, but I've only seen two in the years that I have.
Yeah. And so I was like, there's a hole, there's a void in this conversation that we need to be speaking to young men about these kinds of things. The relationship part came because at the same time I was in a book club here in Hartford where we were talking about The Conversation, the other Hill Harper book, and it dawned on me that when men write books, and have messages about relationships that they're targeting women still. Like Steve Harvey wrote a book with women as the audience in mind. And so even if women were able to get all the secrets to the trades for dating for men, they would not have partners, they wouldn't have counterparts if we're not simultaneously developing the young men, if we're not writing to them, if we're not speaking to them, if we're not helping them develop the emotional stability and the maturity and integrity and the honesty and the communication skills. If we're not doing that, then who are the women supposed to partner with if they're having the book club? I'm in the book club, I'm the only man in this book club talking about black relationships. And so I'm like, well, there's an imbalance here in the way we're preparing the men and the women. And women are typically already better at, to some degree, having these kind of open, vulnerable conversations. You go to, a beauty shop, and the tone of the conversation is often different than in the barbershop, just in terms of the openness. Like, women just have a way of being able to connect to each other and speak more about their feelings in ways that men are more uncomfortable with. And so that preparation, that idea that men aren't thinking about serious partnership until they get 30, and then they're having to redo the things that they learned, the socialization, and having to learn from their mistakes. Just wasn't a healthy way to think about partnering and families in our community. So the book came from that. The book came from my experiences wanting to write that book that I would have wanted to send that young man that was locked up, and then include these conversations that I was having, like these big brother, just plain talk, just diverse, run the gamut kinds of conversations about politics, about character development, about culture, about identity, all this kind of stuff. I just wanted to put it in one place, and so that's what Ladies Man is.
Wow. So, how does a book start out? How do you get into the conversation with young men?
I start off just by anchoring the importance of the moment we're in. I'm a scholar still, and so I did a lot of research. There's I cite sources. I got statistics in there just to help young people see the need, young men in particular. I feel like there's a lot of young men that are stuck in their own world and on their grinds, or just trying to run their block or whatever it is they're trying to do, but not thinking about the context of African Americans in a bigger picture, in the social, economic, political sphere that we're in. Think about historical context, and so I start with that. I start with big picture. I start with where we came from, with who are black people, how did we come to this place, what happened to us here, and what are how are we represented now in terms of economics, in terms of family structure, in terms of education. What is the state of Black America, and what do men have to do to make some changes, to make that different, to make it better, to empower our communities, to make changes for real.
What do you think are most of these people that you encountered, most of the men, were from single family homes?
I meet a lot of young men that did not have active relationships with their fathers, but even the ones that had fathers still weren't having the kinds of conversations that I feel like we needed to be having. There's still lots of conversations that I did not have with my father that I wish I had before I started dating, before I started being a father. There's stuff that men just don't want to talk about. We have very surface level conversations sometimes. We can talk sports, we can talk cars, we can talk girls, but we don't really talk about what we're struggling with. We don't talk about how we feel about things authentically. And so even when men have older men around, we're still missing levels of conversations.
Because it's the old boys, it's kind of like the boys club. You talk about the football,
absolutely.
I find that, I always think that men always know what to talk about because they can jump in there with the sports and so they can have all this wonderful conversation. But you're saying they're really not having a conversation. They're really not talking about what's inside of them or what they're thinking about. I kind of find that true of young men, even with my own sons, that when all of a sudden they pop out with something, and I said, and I'll say, what? Because why wouldn't you talk about this years ago? Why are you talking about this now? But how do the young men get this out if they're not getting it through the adults? Because my father once told me, sitting at a table, and I cried over this too. Said to me, I can't cry in front of anyone. When I feel like crying, and he said to me, I have children of my own, and my father is sitting there saying, I hurt, but I can't. Men don't cry.
Right.
And my brother said to me, I didn't have birthdays. And I said, what do you mean you didn't have? I didn't notice that there was excitement when my sister and I had a birthday. But I never noticed that nobody, he didn't have a birthday. I didn't notice the things that he did not have that we had. And so he talks about them now, and he may overcompensate for some of the things because he didn't have them, nor, and he's very upset about not having that relationship he wanted so badly. But of course, being a girl, I didn't know. I just thought everything was fine. And maybe that's one of the things, that we think everything is fine, but everything is not fine. And then when all of a sudden they do something just out of the ordinary for us, like a young man who is now standing on a block that should be in high school, or, and they're all around my building, you know, or who says that, no, that doesn't matter. And his mother lives down the street and has brought him up the best she could. And he has not been one of those, he's not a latchkey kid. He's not she just did the best she can. And his family is saying, get off the block, get off the block. And he's still there because there's something there he needs, right?
And they're also not giving them alternatives often. We always tell young people what not to do, but don't say, but here, come here instead. There's another employment opportunity. There's another opportunity for identity or respect or the things that they get from the block. We got to be able to replace those things. But the other thing that I think is important in reframing what it means to be a man, to be a provider and protector even, like I imagine there's lots of men that feel like what we're taught we're supposed to provide is like financial stuff and be breadwinners. And so what your son, it sounded like, was saying was that I wanted a relationship. Like I wanted that, like tenderness and affection from my father. Like I wanted time spent. And so in a world where the unemployment rates for black men are, you know, all over the place, all over the country, there's this renegotiation that we're having to do that I think that we're not doing intentionally to shift what it means to provide, what it means to provide time, skills, values, support, just space, right, in the house. And so there's things that like we get caught up on as men, the don't cry thing. The problem with that is exactly as you speak to, where we don't feel like we have the permission to experience like the tough emotions, like, you know, fear or sadness. We can only express anger. It's the only thing the men get to express is anger. And so we take sadness and all the other stuff and ball it into anger, and that's the only thing that shows up.
That is really good to know, because I know a lot of angry men.
And so they show anger, but you also know a lot of hurt men. You know a lot of sad men, a lot of afraid men, and you
but they
think
don't
it's
show
just,
that.
Because, and so that becomes a skill set. That becomes a thing that we have to create space to allow men to have the safety to do, and the language to do, and all of that is a process, right? It's a process, and when men not being able to do that cuts us off from being able to feel authentically the range of emotions that all humans feel, and it also means that if I can't feel sadness for real, if I can't really like sit in pain for long enough, if I use, you know, drugs or alcohol or women or money or food, all these things that we can do to just distract ourselves from the feeling, to just remain numb, to feel like I don't care, like I'm not affected, I'm not bothered by any of this, to not feel that low, also keeps us from feeling like joy for real. Like it's the same process, the same mechanism that allows us to be completely present, to be fully human, keeps us from being excited about birthdays, keeps us from experiencing that like life is a thing that you should seek and be invigorated about, and have things to look forward to. But we stay like just humdrum, like just real stagnant and in the middle, just because we're not allowed to exercise the range of feelings and to be able to find that in ourselves.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm sorry. You know, I always forget, but we got to go to commercial right now, and we will be right back. Oh, how much? Welcome back to Miss Cleo's Storytelling Corner. And before we get back to Dr. Hartman, I want to show you, isn't that a beautiful cover? Isn't that gorgeous? I love it.
Thank you.
All those young women, and of course that handsome man is standing in front of them. Isn't that nice?
That's me. I don't know if you...
Oh, I recognized you, even though you don't have all that hair. Mm-hmm. I do recognize you. And this is Dr. Hartman's book. He's going to be at 677 Blue Hills Avenue this evening at 6:30. Join us, and you could ask him all the questions that you would like to ask him with no time limit. So, hey, come and join us. Talk about your sons and your brothers and your husbands and what's going on with them and how we can help them. Okay.
So that's me and my sisters.
Oh, these are your sisters.
These are my 5 sisters, my 5 actual...
Oh, he has 5 sisters. All of these women are his sisters.
And so the work for me is really about honoring them, right?
Honoring them,
making space where part of the conversation about manhood and the reshifting the narrative about what men do, what men are, includes at its base having a genuine reverence for women. Men are taught often the opposite version of ladies' man, where women belong to us, right? They're our playthings. We do what we want with them, and then we discard them when we're finished. But the reframe for me in the book is that I am a ladies' man in a way. The apostrophe suggests that I, as a man, belong to these women. I belong to my mother. Like I exist because my mother sacrificed, and she created me, and she allowed me the space. She gave me everything I wanted. So because of that, I have an obligation to serve her. I have a responsibility to her, and that extends to my sisters, and extends to women, period, in a way that is a shift for me in how I think men are socialized. That I think we get the opposite messages. That
I think so because I was told by a man, and he said, I did everything. I pay all the bills. I go to work. I do it, but he didn't interact with his family. And he didn't. But he didn't know. He did what he thought was the correct thing to do. That's what a man does. That's what my father did with my brother. Took the roller skates away when my brother loved to roller skate with us, but because boys didn't roller skate.
Oh wow!
And wanted to put a hammer in his hand when my brother wanted a telescope, but he wanted him to work with his hands. He did get the telescope, but that was much controversy between the parents. So how a man is brought up, and which means the way you're saying it, all those feelings, all those things he wants to express, he can't express because he's also afraid of, hey man, what's wrong with you? Hey man, are you a she? Blah 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 blah. Because he has those feelings. I can remember directing a soup kitchen, and a fight would break out. An argument would break out, and I knew who wanted to fight and who didn't want to fight. But most of the time, neither one of them wanted to fight. But the thing is, you got all these people around you. So you can't say, I'm not fighting with you, or I'm not going to do this and sit down. Because then you're looked upon as weak. So I would have to go in the middle of them, make some scene, say either sit down or get out. So you might as well sit on your seat, go over there, blah, 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 blah. And so in a way that they could blame me for the situation and not blame them. And so they could save face. So many times I did things so they could save face because they had to go out there with all of these people and not get ribbed or, made fun of. So how does a young man, of course, Aaron, do you have that where he has to accept himself as who he is and show his feelings regardless of who cares and who doesn't care? How many men get to that point where they could really utilize your book.
Well, so what you're describing is a really, like, it's a prison. It's a very rigid box that men are allowed to express and to become in, and it limits our ability to really be like innovative, to be authentic. I think that transfer of man's socialization comes out of history for us in this country, where we got into survival mode for a long time, and so you think this is what you got to do just to make ends meet, just to keep the bread on the table, just so you keep your head down, like don't make no fuss. But if you get too creative, if you get too bold, if you get to express too much, then there's trouble for you. And so I think that we pass that down without doing any like renegotiation of that, without reflecting on how much that's healthy for us or not healthy for us. And for me, it's not always just about men always expressing whatever they feel whenever they feel it. I don't know that that's always needs to be the case. I think that men do need to always be aware of their feelings and have some people that they can express that comfortably with. I'm not an advocate of men just like if you're at work and somebody give you a bad report, start crying, right?
Yeah.
Especially in front of white people. I still have this idea of what it looks like to want to present as strong and to be, and be warriors. But I think that there needs to be some space that we have that we can go to where we feel comfortable, where we feel safe, and that even if I'm fronting in the moment, I know it, right? A lot of men don't even realize it themselves because we don't spend the time, particularly young people. This is becoming a more problem for young people in being able to sit still long enough to just be able to feel what's happening in my body, to just be able to know where anger is going to start to bubble up, to know if my heart beats, if my stomach gets queasy, if I get warm, or if I start sweating. Like our body becomes the signals for the emotions that we can't pay attention to because we keep moving so fast. We're scrolling and the headphones in, and we can't even listen to our own body to tell us where's my anxiety sitting. Like there's something happening in my stomach that's trying to give me a message. It could be from from my intuition. It could be from my ancestors. Whatever it is you believe that you get messages from that tells you to pay attention, that something's happening, that you've been violated, or that you've been hurt, or you lost something. These messages that are fuel for information for decisions to help become more successful and to be well and to move to the next direction. Like men have a hard time, particularly young people, have a hard time just sitting still long enough to just even be aware of that, just to begin to know that this feels like maybe I'm nervous about something. Let me figure out what that's about.
That's an increasing problem. That problem is becoming more and more that we're not listening to ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'd like to. What is this? I'm a man thing.
What do you mean?
I mean, men are always saying, "I'm a man." You don't do this, blah, blah, I'm a man. I can remember my father always saying, I'm the man, I'm the man. I never understood that we could all see that he was the man. But I never understood why it was so necessary for him to constantly say, and I've seen other men do that.
Yeah.
I'm the man, I'm a man. Yeah. Don't do blah, 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 I'm a man.
I mean, I think often
what is that
of
from?
Insecurity. If you really powerful for real,
you don't need to say that.
You don't gotta say it. No. You show it. It comes out in your, like, people respond to you.
Right.
In a certain way. But if you're starting to feel like you from inside of yourself are starting to question your own power, your own masculinity, your own sense of control or impact, then you gotta declare it. Then, and men do the beating the chest thing. We do the posturing of manhood often. But we don't think as much about cultivating real power and what that looks like, and to have, and some of that power is being able to sit and be aware of yourself. Some of it is having the courage to be vulnerable and to be emotional and to find a safe space to do it, but also to think about what are the ways that we can connect our creative gifts, our intellect, our skills and resources to impacting the community in ways that are more meaningful. And so Black men have always been aware that we are taught that men are supposed to be in charge, but in this country, another man is in charge. And so we always have this conflict, this tension to want to declare, no, we powerful too. Like, I'm not beneath, I'm not subservient to somebody else. but we do that in a performance often, but not really in a let's develop the institutions and the infrastructures and the communities that suggest your power, that like shows your power, and that is represented in your children and your children's children, and you create legacies and you pass down institutions and that kind of stuff. And so that's what power is, and that's what men are supposed to be doing. But we spend so much time, playing the game, and we get so distracted by the things, and there's so much that goes haywire in the development of that we find ourselves older and wanting to be like, no, but I'm a man, right? Let me find ways to look like it, to dress the part, to wear the man costume, but we're not thinking about the internal, the structure, the character of a man. Like, what are the ingredients of a man? And so that's what I want to talk more about. That's what I want the conversation for us to be more about. Okay, what is the inside of a man?
We're going to get right back to that. You can tell us.
I don't mean now. I just mean like in general. It's like the conversation at work. Yeah.
All right, we're going to go to a commercial right now, and we'll be right back in a moment for our last segment. The folks at Cull Books in Hartford want to remind parents, kids need to exercise the most important muscle in their body, the brain. How do you do that? Read. What happens? Well, let me tell you. The imagination soars, the creativity blossoms, the world opens up, and the need to be entertained by outside forces diminishes. Don't believe me? Try it. You won't be sorry, and in time, either will your kids. Cull Book cares about your child's literacy. Join Miss Cleo every week on Miss Cleo's Storytelling Corner online at accesstv.org.
Let's face it, there's a lot you don't know about sickle cell disease.
That it's not contagious.
It's hereditary.
That it can be unbearable.
That you could have the gene that passes it on to your children,
but not even know it.
And that there's a simple test so you can know it.
Let's face it, there's a lot you don't know about sickle cell disease.
And that's a disease too.
Call the 211 info line to learn more.
Welcome back to Miss Cleo's Storytelling Corner with Dr. Cartman. And we're going to have a few more questions to ask him. I wish you could talk and ask him questions yourself, but he'll be at 677 Blue Hills Avenue this evening at 6:30. Come by and ask him all the questions you would like. And bring your young men with you. Bring your young men. Okay, Dr. Cartman, I'd like to ask you, why would a young man pick up this book? How would he? I mean, he could see the cover. Why would he pick up this book? Because it says "ladies' man," and he wants to see,
That's often the catch. And so the trick cover was because every time I would show it to a young man, they would be like, "Oh yeah, I would read that." And they would see the women and say, as soon as they find out they're my sisters, right? They, because they first are like, they're trying to pick which one they want, right? And then I'm saying, no, these are my sisters, right? And that switch in awareness, it becomes a powerful moment of thinking about why is it that you look at them so differently, knowing that someone standing next to them is responsible for them and is accountable to them, right? So then that becomes the beginning of the conversation. What does it look like to shift the way we think about a relationship with women once I realize that they belong to somebody, right? And then to extend that to understanding that every woman belongs to somebody. They all got mothers and cousins and brothers, and that we should have some accountability to each other and not just see them as like things, as like objects, in ways that the music supports, in ways that the locker room talk supports. And so I'm cutting through all of that just to get the young men to reframe that. And the other reason I wanted to write a book is because part of the work is literacy itself, right? You got a bookstore, right? And so bookstores all over the country are struggling. People aren't
Oh, yes.
sending their young people to buy books. I never expected a bunch of young kids to go to the bookstore to buy the book. Like it was designed to be a conversation between parents and teachers. So I expect, teachers to buy it and coaches to buy it and then read it first and then have that conversation with the young men.
Oh, okay.
I wrote it in a way that's very simple and clear. Like there's no fancy words, no jargon. It reads just like I would talk to somebody. And so they often, I find a lot of young people that like a parent made them read it and then they say, well, I ain't never read a whole book before, but this was good. Like they immediately realize it's for me, which changes things. They're in school, they're reading, I don't know, Catcher in the Rye, or stuff that's not even for them, right? And the language is weird. But this is a plain talk, real straightforward, and relevant to their life. And it gets them hooked into reading in a way that's different. They have an experience of reading a whole book, and then they have a hunger for reading more books just because there's something about reading that like we've got disconnected from, right? There's something about being able to just cut away from we're a very visual, oriented society now because of the Snapchats and the phones and they're watching TV all the time. But there's something that the brain does for itself that feels really good once you cultivate that part of your brain where you just create visions in your own head based on somebody else's words. And then you start to write your own words. And then I encourage young people to write. I encourage young people to journal. It's a very honest book, and so they appreciate that. I talk about myself, so they learn something about me. But I think the thing that I hope and I've experienced young people getting from it is just understanding that they have to think more about who they are, to be more intentional about what it is they want to get out of life, and to not just keep going through the motions. A lot of young people are just doing what their parents told them to do, or trying to go to school, to go to college maybe, but not really thinking about why or who they are, and connecting that to a bigger vision and a bigger plan, and connecting that to a bigger history of being Black and African, and connected to Africa itself. So I talk about culture. I talk about all that kind of stuff.
How did you get there? I mean, how did you connect the dots? When you were a teenager or preteens and your parents want you to go to college, how were you that young man who didn't think, or did your parents direct you in a way where you thought about
this was a
things?
lot of my parents doing. I'm a product of a community of people that invested a lot in me. And so I went to my first experience in school was at an African-centered independent school where we learned about history and culture, and we didn't do no Pledge of Allegiances. We were doing plays and playing djembes and celebrating Kwanzas. And so my history was started with thinking about the glory and possibility and brilliance of African people, and that I was connected to that. And so every time I would go to school, I never had this hang up that school's not for us, that's white people stuff, that we're not scholarly people, we're not intellectual people. And so I've always loved reading. I always loved learning, whether it's in school or not. I spent a lot of time in school, so I got over school after a while and started to realize that the schools were rooted in systems that were meant to keep us in place in ways too. And so there's lots of training that happens in schools. And so a lot of what I had to do to do this kind of work, to be a healer, to be a teacher in our communities, had to undo some of what school does, because there's a lot of training and rigidity that we get from school, and they don't teach critical thinking and creative thinking in ways that I think are meaningful for us. And so I just over time just to learn to balance what I think power is and where it comes from, the importance of education in formal institutions and just in life, just by going to bookstores or going to libraries or going to lectures and experiencing, having conversations with elders. I'm always learning, and I have a yearning for that I think I got from my house and from my community, that always meant I was connected to something bigger and greater that is a part of my identity, which shapes everything I do.
Okay, how do you think after the book is written, hopefully it's going to get out there to teachers and coaches and all.
Yeah.
But you say that there's something in our educational system that really isn't for us. But most of us have to endure it. And then after it's over, we have to undo it if we want to be who we are.
And do good work.
And do your work. How are you looking towards something or creating something that could help do that? And I'm getting at creating a curriculum
Absolutely.
for an after-school program
I'm glad
that,
you asked that.
could help. Like when I was a kid, everybody, the Catholic kids went to catechism. I always thought black kids ought to go somewhere after school to undo some of the things that were done to them in school. My thing is, so we got more churches than anybody. I think after school programs should be in every church in the world. You know, so.
No, I'm actually finishing up a curriculum called Manifest. It's a 12. It could be a 12-week, 12-month, whatever. However you want to extend the units. That does exactly that. That walks through. Because when I do presentations, like there's usually young people in front of me, and so I don't sit there and read the book. I have hip hop videos. I got multimedia stuff. It's very engaging, and you know. So I've been collecting over years a bunch of like social media. Always has tools. And so I've been trying to coordinate that and organize it into a way to use these tools, videos, lyrics, printing lyrics out, snippets from TV shows, to have these kinds of conversations about culture and character and education in real ways. And so I got a curriculum that's full of that kind of stuff.
There is
that I want
another,
people to do.
an African doctor that made a curriculum for all age groups. Do you know who he is?
An African doctor?
Yes. He has an African name. I don't know if he's an African. That I had in my store. That was, and it was a curriculum.
Okay.
There from ages kindergarten all the way up through high school.
Okay.
And I'll tell you some of the books. I still have some at the bookstore and curriculum, but I tried to get that funded a couple of times, but I'm not connected. I'm not connected with the people who do those things.
Right.
I'm not connected. I'm just sort of in like a cone there. So I never got a lot of it done, but I sold quite a bit of it to some organizations.
Okay.
But I don't see it anywhere. I don't see it being done, and I don't see the churches, and I don't see after school programs. Would love to have an after school program, but I'm not an educator. I need guidance in that kind of thing. So just was wondering.
Yeah. No, that's definitely been
how easy. And you have not ever seen a curriculum?
I have not. I've seen some curriculums, but they are all missing something. A lot of them don't do the culture piece that well. A lot of them don't touch the violence against women, sexism, misogyny kind of conversation. A lot of them don't do systems analysis well enough for me. And so I wanted to do something that like meted the needs that fit some of the voids that I saw in mentoring programs. I mean, there's a lot of mentoring programs, there's a lot of curriculums, but I think that they're just missing stuff. So I think the combination of a bunch of different things is what I was trying to achieve, and that I'm continuing to work on.
Oh, I hope you get it done, because
it will definitely get done.
Love to see it.
It will definitely get done.
Thank you for being with us today at Miss Cleo's Storytelling Corner. It was a pleasure. It was certainly a pleasure, and you enlightened me. And his book is Ladies' Man. Of course, he'll be at 677 Blue Hills Avenue this evening. Come and talk to Dr. Cartman. Come and talk to Dr. Cartman. Now, as usual, we have to leave you, and we'll be back next week. So remember, read a little, write a little, dream big, and I'll see you next week.